Bible in a year, making it easier to understand.
John, have you ever had that moment? You know the one, where you're already drowning, your life is in absolute pieces, and the person you thought was your closest friend just stands over you and starts listing every mistake they think you've made? Except, here's the kicker. They're totally making it up.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like you're at your lowest point and they decide to play judge, jury, and executioner. And Stephanie, when I saw that list you sent over for today, job 22, 23, 24, and 25, I thought, buckle up because the gloves are officially off.
Welcome back to the Deeper Dive community. I'm Stephanie, the researcher who spends way too much time in the dusty corners of history, and I'm here with my husband, John, the guy who turns those dusty corners into a modern mirror we can actually see ourselves in.
And we are back. Today is a heavy one, guys. We are in the third round of the debate. If this were a boxing match, the fighters are bleeding, they're exhausted, and Eliphaz, Job's friend, is basically throwing illegal low blows at this point.
He really is. John, I was looking at Job 22, and it honestly broke my heart. Eliphaz has given up on gentle advice. He's literally inventing social crimes to fit his theory. He tells Job, "Is not your evil abundant? There is no end to your iniquities." And then he starts listing things. He says Job stripped people of their clothes, withheld water from the thirsty, and crushed orphans.
Wait. Let's look at the modern mirror here. This is like, okay, think of it like that one person in the group chat who is always correcting everyone's grammar instead of actually listening to the story. But Eliphaz takes it a step further. Because his grammar is his theology, his formula for how God works. His formula says, God is good, God is powerful, Job is suffering, therefore Job must be a secret criminal.
Exactly. And since he can't find any real sins in Job's life, he just invents them based on what a rich guy in the Middle Bronze Age might do. He says Job took pledges for nothing. Now, in the ESV text, a pledge sounds like a promise, but in history, it was a down payment on a debt. Usually, it was a cloak, the only thing a poor person had to keep them warm at night.
Right. It's like a predatory lender taking someone's car, their only way to get to work, as collateral for a tiny loan. It's heartless. Eliphaz is basically saying, Job, I know you're the kind of guy who would repossess a widow's only stove just to make a buck. And we know from the very first page of this book that God himself called Job blameless and upright.
It's so frustrating to read. Eliphaz is literally bending the truth to fit his retributive justice worldview, the idea that the good always get cookies and the bad always get a timeout. He even tells Job in verse 21, "Agree with God and be at peace, thereby good will come to you."
Oh, the classic just pray more and your bank account will grow speech. It's the formulaic faith that sounds so spiritual, but is actually so cruel when someone is sitting in the ashes. Eliphaz is essentially telling Job to say the magic words, so God will give him his stuff back. He says if Job puts away his gold and treats it like dust, then the Almighty will be his gold.
Which sounds nice in a vacuum, right? But he's saying it to a man who has already lost everything. Job's gold is already dust.
But let's look at how Job responds in chapter 23. This is where it gets real for us today. Job doesn't even bother rebuking Eliphaz this time. He's moved past the human debate. He's looking for the judge. He says, "Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat." He wants to present his case.
I love this part, John, because it shows Job's researcher heart. He is doing an east-west, north-south search. He says, "I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I do not perceive him." He's checking every corner of the universe.
Okay, modern mirror time. For our Gen Z and millennial listeners, Job is basically being ghosted by God. Think about it. You've sent the message. It says delivered. You know he's there. Job says, he knows the way that I take, but there is no reply. You check the east, the west, the north, and the south, and nothing. Just silence.
That is such a powerful analogy, John, because ghosting usually makes us spiral into self-doubt, right? We ask, am I not enough? Did I do something wrong? And that's exactly what the friends are trying to make Job feel. But Job does something different. Even in the silence, he clings to his integrity. He says he hasn't departed from God's commands. He says he has treasured the words of his mouth more than my portion of food.
Here's the bottom line. Well, wouldn't you be terrified too? Job says in verse 15 that he is terrified at his presence. But even though he's scared, and even though he's being ghosted, he makes this incredible declaration of faith in verse 10. He says, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold."
We're going to do a deeper dive into that word tested later. But first, we need to talk about the shift in chapter 24. Job stops looking at his own skin and starts looking at the world. He starts asking why God doesn't have set times for judgment. He's basically saying, okay, forget my case for a second. Look at the systemic evil in the world. Why are the bullies winning?
Now, here's the kicker. Chapter 24 is like a raw, gritty documentary. Job is listing street-level crimes from the ancient Near East, moving landmarks, stealing donkeys from orphans, taking a widow's ox as security. This isn't just dusty history. This is Job pointing at the unjust systems and asking God, where are the court days? Why isn't there a scheduled time to fix this?
It's so visceral. In the ancient world, landmarks were these stone pillars that marked where your family's land ended. If someone moved your landmark, they weren't just moving a fence. They were literally stealing your inheritance and your ability to feed your kids. It was a boundary-crossing sin.
It's like, okay, think of it as educational redlining. And we
Or
are back from
predatory
our
real
break.
estate.
I've got a fresh cup of coffee, Stephanie's got her mountain of research papers, and we are ready to dive back into the middle of the storm with Job.
It's a literal mountain, John. But honestly, I think we need all of it because chapter 24, it's a shift. It feels different than anything we've read so far. Up until now, Job has been very focused on, well, his own skin, his own losses, his own children. But here, it's like he zooms out. It's like he's holding a camera and filming a social documentary of the entire world's pain.
Yes, it's like he stops looking in the mirror and starts looking out the window. And man, what he sees is brutal. It's raw. It's like he's scrolling through a news feed that is nothing but breaking news tragedy over and over again. And the modern mirror here is so clear, it's almost uncomfortable.
It really is. In Job 24, he starts listing these systemic evils. And systemic is just a fancy way of saying problems that are built into the way the world is organized. It's not just one bad guy. It's a whole machine of unfairness. John, the first thing he mentions in verse 2 is that people remove landmarks. Now, to us, a landmark is like the Eiffel Tower or the Statue of Liberty. But in the ancient world, this was a massive crime.
Right. Modern mirror time. Think of a landmark as the legal deed to your house or the GPS coordinates of your property line. In a world without fences or digital records, these stone pillars were the only things saying, this land belongs to Stephanie's family. So, if a powerful guy comes along in the middle of the night and moves that stone 10 feet into your yard, he just stole your livelihood.
And he didn't just steal the grass, John. He stole the inheritance for your kids. He stole your ability to graze your sheep. It's like identity theft and real estate fraud wrapped into one. And Job is asking, God, why do you let these guys just move the stones and then publicly graze their sheep on the stolen land like they own the place?
It's that impunity that gets him. Impunity. That's a big word, so let's use the 5th grade rule. It just means getting away with something without any consequences. Job is looking at these guys who are snatching the fatherless from the breast. I mean, can you imagine? They are taking children as payment for a debt.
It's horrifying. It's literally debt slavery. If a poor family couldn't pay for the grain they needed to survive, the rich lenders would take their kids as pledges. And Job says God is just watching. He says in verse 12, "From the city the dying groan, and the soul of the wounded cries out for help, yet God charges no one with wrong."
And that is the big question for the modern seeker, right? Why does the bad boss get the promotion? Why does the predatory lender get the yacht while the family they exploited gets evicted? We see this today in things like educational redlining, where some kids get a great school because of a zip code and others get nothing. Or when the system makes it impossible for someone to get a fair trial because they can't afford a high-priced lawyer.
Exactly. Job even mentions pushing the needy off the road. In the ancient Near East, the roads were the infrastructure. If you weren't on the road, you were in the desert, which was basically a death sentence. It's like cutting off someone's internet or access to the hospital today. You're not just being mean, you're making it impossible for them to survive.
And notice what happens to the poor in verse 4. They have to hide themselves. They become invisible. They're huddling in wadis, which are dry riverbeds, soaked by the mountain rains because they have no shelter. Job is describing a world where the gap between the haves and the have-nots isn't just a gap, it's a canyon.
It's a social commentary that feels like it could have been written this morning. But John, what I find so interesting is Job's frustration with the timing. He starts the chapter by asking, why are times not stored up by the Almighty, and why do those who know him not see his days?
He's asking for a court date. He's saying, God, if you're the judge, why isn't there a scheduled time on the calendar where you show up and fix this? Why are the good guys looking for you in the courtroom and finding a closed sign on the door?
It's that feeling of delayed justice. We want God to be like a superhero who flies in the second someone gets bullied. But instead, Job sees the murderer rising at dawn to kill the poor, and the thief prowling at night, and the adulterer waiting for the twilight, and it seems like the darkness is winning.
But wait, here's the modern mirror that actually gives me a little hope. Job is allowed to say this. I think a lot of people feel like they have to protect God's reputation. They think, I can't tell God I'm mad about the news, or I can't tell him I'm confused by why bad things happen to good people. But Job, God's blameless servant, is literally screaming at the sky about it.
He really is. He's showing us that honest lament. And lament is just a Bible word for crying out with a purpose, is a form of faith. It's saying, I believe you should care, so I'm going to keep asking why it looks like you don't.
I love that. Faith doesn't always feel like trust. Sometimes it feels like pursuit without an answer. It's like pounding on the door of the judge's office until he finally opens up. Job is refusing to settle for an easy answer. He's saying, Eliphaz, your little be good and get cookies formula doesn't work when there are orphans being snatched from their mothers. We need a better answer.
And he's right. The formula is broken. And as we move into chapter 25, we're going to see that the friends finally run out of things to say. They've used up all their stained glass language and all their religious jargon, and they've got nothing left for a man who is staring into the darkness.
It's like when you're arguing with someone and you realize you're totally wrong, so you just start repeating the same 3 sentences over and over again. That's Bildad. He's about to give the shortest, most I give up speech in the whole book.
It really is. But before we get there, let's take one more quick break, because when we come back, we're going to talk about why being called a maggot and a worm might actually be the most hopeful thing in this entire section.
Only you could find hope in a maggot, Steph. But you're right. There is a hidden gem in the Hebrew there that is going to blow your mind. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with segment 3 and the Crimson Worm.
We'll be right back.
And we are back for the final stretch. I hope you guys didn't get too comfortable on that break because we are about to hit the hidden gem of this entire 4-chapter block. Steph, I've got my espresso, I've got the ESV text open to chapter 25, and I am ready to geeking out.
I can see the theology nerd light in your eyes, John. But before we get to the geeking out part, we have to address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the tiny elephant. Did you notice how short Bildad's final speech is in chapter 25?
Oh, it's hilarious. It's literally 6 verses. If this were a modern debate on a news channel, this is the part where the guest just says, no comment, and walks off the set. Bildad is done. He's out of fuel. He's out of arguments. He and Eliphaz have been trying to force Job into this retributive justice box for chapters, and Job basically just kicked the bottom out of the box.
It really shows the bankruptcy of their theology, doesn't it? They have nothing new to say. Bildad just repeats what Eliphaz said back in the beginning, that God is big and people are small. But John, he says something in verse 6 that is actually kind of offensive if you don't know the background. He says, how much less man who is a maggot and the son of man who is a worm?
Right? I mean, thanks, Bildad. Way to make a guy feel better while he's sitting on an ash heap covered in sores. Hey, Job, you're a maggot. Great pep talk, buddy. But, and this is where we have to do our deeper dive. There is a massive difference in the Hebrew between that maggot and that worm.
This is our core hidden gem for today. Let's look at the words. The maggot is rimma, which is exactly what it sounds like, a sign of decay and death. But the word for worm in Son of Man who is a worm is tolah.
Now, here's the kicker. Tola isn't just a generic slimy earthworm. It's the crimson worm, the Coccus ilicis. And for our modern seeker community, You need to understand that in the ancient world, this worm was more valuable than a high-end tech stock. Why? Because it's where they got the scarlet dye for the tabernacle and the priest's robes.
Wait, John, so Bildad is trying to insult Job by calling him a worm, but he accidentally uses a word that points to something incredibly precious and sacrificial?
Exactly. The life cycle of the Torah is basically a modern mirror for the gospel written in biology. When the female crimson worm is ready to have babies, she attaches herself to a tree. She fastens herself so securely that she can never be removed without dying. She basically becomes a living shield for her eggs.
That's incredible. And then what happens?
She lays her eggs under her body, and as the babies hatch, they actually feed on her living body to survive. Talk about a picture of sacrifice. And then, when she dies, she releases this vivid, permanent red liquid, the scarlet dye, that stains the wood of the tree and covers her babies. They are literally marked by her red stain for the rest of their lives.
John, my researcher heart is beating so fast right now because that sounds exactly like what Jesus did. Attached to the wood of the cross, giving his life so we could live, and staining us with his own blood so we are identified with him forever.
But wait, it gets even crazier. After 3 days, yes, 3 days, the dead body of that worm loses its red color and turns into a white, waxy substance that looks like a flake of snow. It's a literal biological modern mirror of Isaiah 1 verse 18. Though your sins are as scarlet, they shall be white as snow.
I'm actually speechless. Bildad thought he was demeaning Job, but he was actually using a word that connects Job's suffering to the Son of Man, who would eventually redeem the whole world.
And that brings us back to Job's mic drop moment in chapter 23, verse 10. He's being ghosted. He's being accused of being a maggot. But he says, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold."
John, you have to talk about that word tested. In our simplicity guide, we say to avoid jargon, but this Hebrew word bachan is a gem.
Right. Bakken isn't like a final exam in school where the teacher is hoping you fail so they can give you a D. It's a goldsmith's test. It's an investigation to prove the quality of the metal. Job is saying, "I'm in the fire right now and it's hot and I can't see the goldsmith. But the fact that I'm in the fire proves I'm not trash." You don't refine dirt, Eliphaz. You only refine gold.
I love that. You don't refine dirt. That needs to be on a t-shirt. But let's look at the modern mirror of gold for a second. John, you told me something about NASA and gold the other day.
Oh man, yeah. Listen to this. Gold is so reflectively powerful that NASA actually coats the visors of spacesuit helmets in a thin layer of gold. Why? Because it reflects the infrared rays of the sun. It protects the astronaut from the heat. Think about that. The very thing that Job is being refined into, gold, is the same thing that protects us from the rays of life's heat.
And gold is ductile. John, explain that one.
Ductile just means you can stretch it without it breaking. 1 single ounce of gold can be drawn into a wire 62 miles long. 62 miles! Job's faith is being stretched further than any human should be able to go. But because it's being refined into gold, it's not snapping. It's becoming stretchable faith.
So, whether you feel like a worm being crushed by life, or you feel like you're in the middle of a 62-mile stretch, that will never end. Today's reading is telling you that there is a purpose in the process.
Exactly. Don't look at the fire. Look at the goldsmith. He hasn't forgotten you. He knows the way you take.
This has been such a deep one. John, give us the text message summary for today's deep dive.
Here it is, guys. Even when you feel ghosted, God is the goldsmith stretching your faith into something that reflects his glory.
I love that. And your action step for today? Identify one silent area of your life, maybe a prayer that hasn't been answered or a situation that feels like it's in a holding pattern. And instead of asking for relief, ask God for refining. Ask him to show you what gold he is creating in you while you wait.
That's it for today. We are so glad you're on this journey with us. Remember, you aren't a maggot. You are a masterpiece in the making.
See you tomorrow, everyone.